Roll for Crit is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Come roll with us at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
It's the week of March 8th, 2021. Let's see what Kickstarters are blooming for you this week that you should be trying to pick up. Starting off this Kickstarter is Eternal Palace. In this game, the palace has been built, and you're trying to curry favor with the Emperor by not only making the most beautiful painting, but maybe help with some other sculptures and other favors along the way. Now, you're not the only noble family who's heard about this, so it's a race against the other players and also to outsmart them in terms of placing your workers and also making that beautiful painting I mentioned before. In this game, you will have dice that will represent your workers. Everyone will roll behind their screen and decide how to allocate the workers. What I mean by this is when you roll your dice, you can decide to either spread them out and they'll go to the location with that number, whatever they rolled, or for example, let's say you want to go higher than the usual 6 on a die, so you may add a 5 and a 2 together to make a 7. Meaning you'll go to less places, but you can go to the higher valued ones. So as you get more dice, that means not only can you get to more places, but more likely those higher numbered positions. You're going to have to guess where your opponents are going as well in order to try to beat them first. There's usually bonuses for certain spaces if you are the first or so to go there. But there's also plenty of other things for you to do. There are structures you want to be the one to take credit for building. There are panels for paintings you want to sort of line up and either be the first one to finish a painting, maybe make the longest, aka most decorations for your painting. There are also advisors along the way that you can try to draft in order to, once again, push the odds in your favor. Whoever gets the most victory points is the one who has curried the most favor with the Emperor and is the winner. I really love this idea of the dice workers not simply being wherever they go with their numbers, but secretly deciding like, the 5's okay, but I can give it the 5 and the 2 to hit that 7 spot, which would be really helpful for me. It's not simply just, here's my worker. So there's a bit of luck going on, but I love, especially how you can get more dice and really change things up. I think can really be really funny too. When everyone reveals and you're like, all right, it turns out no one was going to 5. Yeah. I feel like those moments in games are always ones we laugh because it's just like, you think you know what other people are doing. And because there's so many weird combinations, odds are that could be absolutely way off.
I think that the way the dice placement works is what makes this one stand out. And it's also so interesting that you know what other people have rolled. So you can try to predict, well, I know they had a 3 and a 4. Are they going to a 3 and a 4? Or are they going to combine those? Or are they going to combine both of them with another die and go to an even higher number? And based on what you think they want, you can try to puzzle that out. And the painting aspect, I think what they've shown so far may not be final, but it looks like there's some kind of cool layering effect with the different aspects that you collect, which looks really cool. It's the kind of thing that we always like. It's a nice aesthetic touch.
I agree. From what we can see, the layering, that looks very beautiful. It's actually very similar to Canvas, which is behind me over there, but not with transparent cards. But that dice placement thing, that mechanic, I think is going to be the thing that is going to gravitate a lot of people to this Kickstarter because it's that extra little bit of bluffing, but also just the right amount of randomness versus not randomness, I think that will make people interested in this game. If you want to make a beautiful piece of art for the Emperor, you can check out the Eternal Palace for around $46.
Atlas Games is bringing back Gloom with a standalone sequel, Gloomier, A Night at Hemlock Hall. If you're not familiar with the original Gloom, it's a competitive storytelling game in which you have a family of characters and you are trying to play cards onto them to make them more miserable while giving your opponents cards that will make their lives happier. And you're trying to kill your characters off in creative ways once their point values are lower, because this is kind of a dark humor sort of game in the vein of something like The Addams Family or Edward Gorey or what have you. And all the while you're meant to be telling the story in detail of what exactly is happening to these characters. There have been plenty of expansions for Gloom already. This version of it is pretty similar to the original. They are trying to put more of an emphasis, it sounds like, on the storytelling aspect, putting descriptions on the cards that will encourage better storytelling from players. And of course, they are all new cards with new characters and new stories that may affect them, but largely it's the same gameplay, something new to add to your collection. And there are some other goodies along with this Kickstarter, including one giant storage box that will hold every single Gloom card and expansion that exists all in one convenient location. And they have something else called the Gloom Chronicles, which will be included for all backers at this Kickstarter, that is going to turn Gloom into something of a campaign game. And there will be different scenarios presented at the start of each game that may affect the rules, and things may carry over from game session to game session, which to me is maybe the most intriguing part of this. That sounds like the thing that could really change the game, especially for one that's storytelling focused like Gloom is, and might result in some good inside jokes maybe based on what happens to the players or the characters from game to game.
For me, Gloom really is the joy is not from trying to win and get the high score. It is coming up with those weird stories of like, why were you mauled by a manatee? You got to come up with how they got there. And I'm really curious about this campaign thing, because I wonder, like you said, is it the story carrying over then? Like, however the last character died, that someone else has to die that way or something, you know? I'm really curious to see what they do with that. And definitely the box is very helpful to hold all those things, though. I hope there's room, because I feel like the fact that it came out with this Gloomier standalone, we need a Gloomiest now.
Yeah, that's the ultimate thing that's got to come from all of this, is the gloomiest. If you want to get a little bit gloomier in your life, isn't that what we all need right now? You can back this one for just $24. Again, that includes that Gloom Chronicles. And check out the page for the pledge levels that include the box and all the other add-ons you can get.
Night Market from Talent Strike Studios is a game in which you'll be running one of these night markets. But in order to do so, you're going to have to make sure you send your workers out during the day, as well as run your night stalls in order to make the most profit. This game will last over 4 seasons, during which you will be first sending out your workers during the day in order to not only gather ingredients, but lantern actions. These actions can be used to help build up your stalls and gain visitors when it comes to the night phase. But simply placing your workers to get what you want isn't what you have to keep track of. Certain patterns will also reward you on the board, so you're going to maybe want to make sure you get that pattern to get those extra bonuses along the way. Once the day phase is done, you're going to enter the night phase, in which you're going to run your night stalls, trying to fulfill your customers' requirements. If you're able to do so successfully and make a satisfied customer, they'll come back for more seasons with more money. After 4 seasons, whoever has the most victory points, which I can only assume will translate to money, is the winner. I love this idea because the day board is actually shared. So you're going to have to compete with other people for spaces, trying to make those patterns and get those resources of what you want. But the night board's your own. So it has that perfect mixture of like, all right, this is where I'm going to compete with you, so that player interaction. But this is the part of the board where I get to just see how well can I make my engine work.
Yeah, I think it's really
not
cool
too much
combo.
either way.
Yeah, I think having that combination of a shared and a personal space is always fun. And I really do like the idea of the patterns that you're trying to make, that gives it a puzzle aspect that's like, maybe those aren't the resources that I really need the most of, but I can get a little something extra if I put them in that line, that specific way, or whatever it is. I think that could result in some cool decision making.
Oh, not only that, like if there was some big complicated pattern and all of a sudden you place your meeple, no one saw that you made like that perfect zigzag. You know that's going to be one of those moments like, oh, but yeah, it's something I would love to try out. It's got that, I think, the perfect amount where I can still have my fun little build an engine, see how well I do without being it just a multiplayer solitaire game. If you are in the market for Night Market, you can back this Kickstarter for $50.
Three Sisters is our next game, a roll and write, and the first game from the company Motor City Gameworks, a new one that is formed by people like Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback, who designed Three Sisters, and you've probably seen their names on some other games in the past, things like Fleet, the dice game, as they proudly proclaim on this Kickstarter page. This game is all about farming and seeing who can cultivate their crops the best. You're going to have a few different ones that you are trying to make grow, all as optimally as you can based on what's available to you. The way it's going to work is there are going to be dice rolled at the start of each round, and those dice are placed on various actions. And each player will get to choose a die, and then whatever action was associated with the die, they will also get to take that action. You will apply the number of the die you took to your sheet, either planting or watering crops, and then taking the action that will allow you to access other areas of your board, go to the market, for example, grow some things in your apiary, all kinds of different options for you there. But you may not want certain actions because the die number is not going to do what you need it to do. So you have to decide how do you balance those two things. And then also, whichever die is left at the end with the lowest number that no player took, that action is going to be triggered by all players simultaneously at the end. So you will get something else extra to do on your turn. There are then going to be certain events each round. For example, maybe it's raining, so that will water your crops again for you, that all players will have to take into account as to which things they want to do, how, and when. It looks like a cool, fun roll and write game. Pinchback and Riddle have done some games, a lot of which I haven't played, but certainly at least a couple that we're familiar with. And it looks like this is a nice marriage of, farming, the classic board game thing, with roll and write, the new hotness board game thing. Although at this point, roll and write feels like a staple too. It's been long enough.
I think it's officially past the point, yeah.
Yeah. I really, personally, the thing that I like about this the most is how you choose your dice and your actions, especially the fact that something might trigger at the end. So you might even take a die from an action you don't want as much, assuming that someone might leave a different one, and you're like, oh, well, I'll probably get that too if I take this one first, and trying to read people in that way. I think it's an interesting twist on what a lot of, at least a few roll and writes tend to do, which is put out some kind of a pool of things that all players can choose from differently. I think it's kind of a different spin on that.
That extra little bit of trying to not just be like, I'm first in the turn order, so I'll just take what I want, but maybe to try to be like, but what will be left?
Right.
Kind of thing. I think will make for some interesting, at least puzzle solving and dealing with your opponents. I do want to point out, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also solo mode 2, which is also always nice.
Yes.
I'm very curious to see how that would work with that kind of mechanic, because that does seem very player dependent.
Yeah, absolutely. Solo mode is always appreciated. So you can try out Three Sisters right now. You can back it on Kickstarter. By the way, Three Sisters is a reference to growing 3 different types of crops. It's a farming thing. Go to the page. You'll learn something like I did. You can back it for $29.
We're going to end off with one for all you RPG fans out there. More specifically, though, our Dungeon Masters. They put in a lot of work to only be derailed by us in some confusing and very silly way. So this next project, I think, is one that will be very helpful for them. The deck of many quests from Lunch Break Heroes is designed for when you either need to start a campaign really quickly, you didn't have the time to do all the prep work, or, like I said earlier, when your adventures decide to go the one way you didn't build up for. It will include different decks for a quest type, whatever dark evil beast is involved with that quest, and of course, items. This way, you can already have a quest set up and be like, all right, I've got, as they used in their video example, some runes with a celestial, with an item. And that way, like, all right, I guess the celestial's guarding some ancient destroyed runes, enough to give you the hooks that make the players hopefully interested this time. And I can also see this being as a way to maybe even not use the entire thing. Like, maybe you're like, I really want them to get involved with let's continue with the example, celestial, because that's what our whole story plot is. But I don't know where I want it. Just draw from that. If you need a random monster encounter, draw from the monster one. What's in the chest? Draw from the item one. It's one of those things that I think always just helping streamline the RPG session is always helpful. In my experience, I love playing D&D, but it's always disappointing when it turns out your entire session was based on one thing. So anything that allows you to do more is better.
Yes, more is better. Yes, of course, any kind of aid for DMs is always appreciated. I think a lot of those are really fun. I like the idea of it being a deck of cards because that could be something that, maybe you have it behind your screen and you incorporate it in a way people don't know, or you could make it kind of a fun thing of like, all right, guys, now I'm drawing a card from the deck and we'll see what's going to happen. That could be exciting too. So there's fun ways to play with that.
Throw in what's that horrific item that's already part of D&D, like the deck of too many cards, like the one that can do crazy stuff depending on what you draw.
Right.
You can now incorporate this and like, let's see if you get an item or a monster. Who knows?
Yeah.
If you are a dungeon master or you know a dungeon master in need of similar decks, you can back this one for $20.
Of course, there are a couple of heavy hitters this week on Kickstarter that we're not featuring as picks here because we already have or will in the very near future full in-depth previews for those elsewhere on our channel. Those being Everdell, which has a couple of new expansions along with a big collector's edition box. If you like Everdell, you get all kinds of new cards, little animal meeples, new board sections, lots of stuff to dig into there. And then Valeria Card Kingdoms also has an expansion called Darksworn, which turns the game into a co-op experience where you are working together trying to fend off monsters and other threats. So 2 very big expansions for very popular titles that you're definitely going to want to take a look at. But we are not covering them on this episode. You'll have to check out our channel for those.
Like I said, these are 2 big games, ones that we enjoy a lot. Both Valeria and Everdell. And of course, you can watch our video to see more details, what is involved in each of those expansions. Though I will give a little hint here that we're pretty happy with at least what we've seen so far.
Yeah, some good stuff there. Let us know if you think there's some good stuff there or elsewhere on Kickstarter. Talk to us in the comments section right below. Are you backing anything that we mentioned this week? What are you liking the looks of right now? We want to hear from you. Until we do, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this has been our Kickstarter Pickstarter.
Catch the latest from Roll for Crit by liking and subscribing, and don't forget to support us on Patreon.
Don't get analysis paralysis. Just click those buttons. Help us out.